Today, there was a joint session of Congress where the Israeli President, Isaac Herzog, this is not to be confused with Netanyahu, the prime minister. They've got a different system there, where they've got a prime minister and a president. Well, the president spoke to members of the House. The president of Israel is more of a ceremonial position. They're elected for a single 7-year term. They do ceremonious things like sign laws, they endorse ambassadors, they appoint people to certain government positions, and they can pardon or commute some sentences. But the Israeli parliament, called the Knesset, really makes the laws. And then the prime minister, which is currently Benjamin Netanyahu, is really the one in charge. Well, Biden has been dragging his feet to invite Netanyahu to the White House and only finally did extend an invite one day before President Herzog showed up to Washington. And the reason that Biden's been reluctant is because the White House right now is pretty disapproving of some of the things that Netanyahu is pushing for. Not to do with the Palestinians, of course, but mostly having to do with judicial reform that's been causing mass protests for the past 5 or 6 months in the country. Essentially, Netanyahu is ripping the checks and balances of the courts away. He's looking to limit the Supreme Court's powers to rule against the legislative and executive branches, and he wants to remove the Supreme Court's authority to review the constitutionality of laws. So basically consolidating his power, and believe it or not, the White House is not thrilled with that. So rather than invite Netanyahu, the White House, of course, had to extend some sort of invitation to Israel. So they invited President Herzog, which you've probably never heard of him before. Not that that meeting with Biden was all that exciting, because he appears to be falling asleep during his meeting. Watch this.
And we brought Israelis and Palestinians together at a political level, and Akwa and Paul Schramm. And as I affirmed to Prime Minister.
Oh, boy. All right. So Herzog, he's sitting there like, what do I do? He is a much less controversial figure than Netanyahu, mostly because he uses more diplomatic language when he's talking about settlements and Palestinians. He does claim to be against illegal settlements and claims that he wants fairness for the Palestinians. But at the end of the day, it's just lip service, because nothing ever changes for the Palestinians. They continue to be subject to extremely harsh living conditions, and their land in the West Bank continues to be encroached upon. And this is precisely why 9 members of the Democratic Party voted against a resolution that was put on the House floor yesterday, just before Herzog's speech this morning. Let's take a look at the resolution. So this resolution was put forward mostly by Republicans. It was like 43 Republicans or 42 Republicans and like 3 Democrats. It is titled, Expressing the Sense of Congress Supporting the State of Israel. It has 3 statements. Number 1, the State of Israel is not a racist or apartheid state. Number 2, Congress rejects all forms of anti-Semitism and xenophobia. And number 3, the United States will always be a staunch partner and supporter of Israel. Okay. The vote on this was 412. So mostly everybody voted in favor of this. 9 voted against it. The 9 who voted against this resolution were all Democrats. So Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, Andre Carson, Summer Lee, AOC, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Pressley, Delia Ramirez, and Rashida Tlaib. And they also boycotted the joint session of Congress where President Herzog spoke. Now, Jamal Bowman wrote in his press release, "My decision to not attend in no way stems from a lack of support for the existence of the State of Israel. On the contrary, it is out of concern that there is no sense of urgency about ensuring the safety and security of all Israelis and Palestinians in the region and finally achieving a 2-state solution." Cori Bush tweeted, "The Israeli government is responsible for an apartheid regime." Andre Carson tweeted, "Over a year later and still no insight or justice for Shireen. It is imperative that Congress have oversight on the killing of an American citizen and journalist killed abroad by a foreign government, especially one that receives $3.8 billion annually from American taxpayers." If you remember, there was an American Palestinian journalist who was shot and killed by the IDF last year. Summer Lee tweeted, "I cannot vote for unconditional support of any nation state." AOC said this to Fox News. Watch this.
Will you attend his address tomorrow?
I will not be attending. There's currently a crisis of democracy and apartheid.
And I think that this is something that has been a consensus among human rights organizations.
Okay, Ilhan Omar, she tweeted, "I'm voting against this resolution. It was designed by MAGA Republicans to target and shame a colleague, Pramila Jayapal, for comments which she apologized and clarified." And if you remember, Pramila Jayapal was speaking, and she called Israel a racist nation. There was protesters that showed up at a speech at a conference that she was giving a speech at, and she said, "Look, we know Israel's a racist nation." So she was called out for that. And that is why this resolution went to the House floor. It was because after Pramila Jayapal's comments of calling Israel a racist nation, that's when these Republicans got together and Israel is not a racist nation. That's like the resolution. Okay, so Ayanna Pressley issued a press release that stated, quote, "I will always stand with our Jewish neighbors against the very real and overlapping threats of racism, anti-Semitism, and white supremacy. I continue to have serious concerns about the escalation of state-sanctioned violence in Israel and anti-democratic policies that undermine the rights and liberties of Palestinians and Israelis. While Republicans in Congress govern with chaos and contempt, I remain squarely focused on dismantling racist and discriminatory policies at home and abroad." Delia Ramirez tweeted, "Anti-Semitism is real, deadly, and I wholly condemn it. I firmly stand in solidarity with all who work to uphold the human rights and self-determination of Palestinians and Israelis as co-equals. Because lives and democracies are at stake, that is why I voted no." And Rashida Tlaib, she is a Palestinian American, the only Palestinian American in Congress. She has Palestinian family in Palestine, and she gave this very passionate speech to Congress. Watch this.
"I am the only Palestinian American serving in Congress, and I have family members all throughout the West Bank and what many people call the illegally occupied territories. But we're here again, reaffirming Congress' support for apartheid, policing the words of women of color who dare to speak up about truths, about oppression, is just not what we should be doing here in Congress. And let's just get this record straight here. This is not something that's made up. The United Nations, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, Israel's own largest human rights organization, B'Tselem, all agree that Israel is an apartheid state. To assert otherwise, Mr. Speaker, in the face of this just body of evidence, is an attempt to deny the reality and to normalize violence of apartheid. This week, we're going to hear consistently that people touting about like, oh, this is bipartisan support here. Well, don't forget, this body, this Congress, supported the South African apartheid regime, and it was bipartisan as well. But you don't have to take it from me to understand the racism of an apartheid government. Let's take a moment just to hear Israeli government's own politician in their own words. Direct quotes, not mine. Current Prime Minister Netanyahu, on his policies towards Palestinians, quote, "Beat them up, not once, but repeatedly. Beat them up until it's unbearable." And said that Israel must, quote, "crush Palestinian hopes for a fully sovereign state." One of the former defense ministers said Palestinians are, quote, "beasts, and they are not human." He's talking about people like my grandmother, Mr. Speaker. How about former Justice Minister who said they should go, as should the physical homes in which they raise the snakes. Otherwise, more little snakes will be raised there. How about another former defense minister said, quote, "Those who are against us, there's nothing to be done. We need to pick and axe them and cut off their heads." Another quote, "There is no such thing as Palestinian people."
The lady's time has expired.
At its core. Mr. Speaker, Israel's own president, who's
The gentlelady's time has expired. Does the gentleman from New York reserve or yield?
I give the gentlelady 30 seconds.
Israel's own President Herzog, who's going to come before Congress tomorrow, has long advocated against interracial marriages. Did you all know that? Do you care? He said on a news segment, look it up, when he came to America, he said, quote, "encountered something that I call an actual plague. I saw my friends' children married and coupled with non-Jewish partners." Israel is an apartheid state. The government is deeply problematic in the way that they are proceeding in the structure of oppression. This year, Mr. Speaker, just like I speak up against injustices here in America. This is about speaking up
The gentleman's
against
time has expired.
violence.
Does the gentleman from New York
Congress must
yield
stop
or reserve?
funding apartheid.
So President Herzog, the Israeli president, did address some of these statements in his speech this morning. Here he is saying America is irreplaceable to Israel and Israel is irreplaceable to America.
To us, it is clear that America is irreplaceable to Israel and Israel is irreplaceable to America.
Very odd to really be pledging allegiance to a foreign country. We are one, basically, is what he says. Here he is also addressing the criticism that these 9 members expressed.
I'm not oblivious to criticism among friends, including some expressed by respected members of this House. I respect criticism, especially from friends, although one does not always have to accept it. But criticism of Israel must not cross the line into negation of the state of Israel's right to exist. Questioning the Jewish people's right to self-determination is not legitimate diplomacy, it is anti-Semitism. Vilifying and attacking Jews, whether in Israel, in the United States, or anywhere else in the world, is anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is a disgrace in every form, and I commend President Joe Biden for laying out the United States' first ever national strategy to combat anti-Semitism.
So there you have it. Again, just going back to the resolution, just kind of to wrap this up a bit, but the resolution of saying that the state of Israel is not a racist or an apartheid state, I guess no one's saying that the Israeli people themselves are racist, but if you have a nation and the nation's expressed purpose is a home for a particular group of people, and that excludes others, like, oh, well, others can live here, but they're not first-class citizens, they're treated like second-class citizens, that is really kind of the definition of racism. It really is. And that is what people are pushing against, is saying, you know, no one's saying that Israel doesn't have the right to exist. They're simply saying that Palestinians have the right to exist as well. And when you say that questioning the right for Israelis to have self-determination is anti-Semitism, you could say the same thing about Palestinians. Questioning the right for Palestinians to have self-determination is also anti-Semitism. They're all Semitic people, Palestinians and Israelis. They're cousins. They come from the same people. In fact, many of the Palestinians are descendants. They were Jews that then converted in order to spare their lives. And many of the Jews that are in Israel never came from that region. None of their family members ever came from that region ever. The second part of the resolution, you know, the Congress rejects all forms of anti-Semitism and xenophobia. I think we can all agree on that one. It's the first point of this resolution and the last point that are odd. The first one being, you know, saying the state of Israel is not a racist or an apartheid state. You know, there's debate about that. I mean, there's debate. People debate that about the United States, about whether or not we're a racist nation, right? I mean, you don't need a resolution for something that is an opinion that's debated. And the last point on here, that the United States this is one I have a real problem with. The United States will always be a staunch partner and supporter of Israel. Really? Why are we pledging allegiance to another country? We should never be doing that. I don't care what the country is. I mean, the only other country I could see them writing a resolution like this for right now is Ukraine. I mean, imagine that. Oh, we will always be a staunch supporter. No, what if they screw up? What if they're terrible? You can't say that about any other country. You don't ever have to be a staunch supporter of any other nation, pledging allegiance to another nation. This is just a very odd thing. It's just very odd that our government takes such a strong stance with another country as if they're part of us, like a state. I mean, at this point, we might as well just bring them into the union. It's just a very odd thing. So just wanted to showcase what was going on here. I do believe that, I've been to the West Bank. I've traveled around. I've had dinner with Palestinian people and spent time with the Palestinians, and they are wonderful, wonderful people who are absolutely being oppressed by the state of Israel. The government of Israel is making their lives miserable with the expressed intent to push them out so that they can take over the land. That is exactly what they're wanting to do. It's not about, our safety or our right to exist. It's about their right no longer to take over that land. The Palestinians have been there for thousands of years. They want them gone, and they're trying to push them off that land. And that is really obvious, except we have been propagandized in this country to believe otherwise. And if you say anything other than that, then you are anti-Semitic, and that is just not true. Many of us are just speaking the truth. We're calling it like it is, and that's that. All right, guys. Let me tell you about Field of Greens, one of my favorite products. You guys know that I love this stuff. And if you use the promo code Kim, you're going to get 15% off your first order of any of the products there at the Field of Greens website. Now, this is a fine powder that is made from dehydrated whole fruits and vegetables that are carefully selected to give you the most nutrients in your diet possible. So don't worry about eating all your fruits and vegetables. I got to get all the colors in. I got to get all the nutrients, like whatever. You're not going to do it. So just drink this stuff and you will get all of the nutrients you need from all of your fruits and vegetables. You're going to feel more energetic. You're going to sleep better. You're going to lose weight because you're not craving junk. You're going to have healthier skin and hair. You're going to look years younger. Just guess my age. It's because I've been drinking Field of Greens. No, really though, I love this stuff. I really like the lemon lime flavor. It actually tastes good. A lot of people think green drinks, bleh. This one does actually taste good. It is pleasant to drink. It's not something I choke down. I actually like it. So go to fieldofgreens.com. You will get 15% off your order when you use that promo code Kim.